Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. So for today's episode, a listener sent in this super helpful article, and it's all about, how to handle those tricky medical situations that might pop up when you're traveling in, a different country.
Yeah.
And, I think we all know how important it is to be prepared.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to something as, crucial as our health. So our mission today is to basically dissect this article and pull out the absolute essential English phrases and the best strategies to make sure that you feel, ready to tackle any health hiccups that might, come up during your trip.
Right.
We're going to zero in on, how to communicate effectively with doctors, how to explain exactly what's going on with your body, and of course, how to understand any medications that you might need.
And you know what? I think this is especially relevant now, right? With, travel kind of booming again post-pandemic. I'm sure a lot of people are feeling, a little bit anxious maybe about those what-ifs.
Yeah.
Especially if their English isn't, super advanced. Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned anxiety because I think that's a big part of it, right? When you're already in a new environment, things are unfamiliar. And then on top of that, you have to deal with a health issue.
Absolutely.
It can be really overwhelming. And I think just having a grasp of these essential phrases can make a world of difference in terms of your confidence and your peace of mind.
Yeah, exactly. And, the article kicks off by outlining, some of those potential hurdles that you might run into when dealing with a medical situation abroad.
Yeah.
And it's not just about, feeling sick, right?
Mm-mm.
It's about bridging that communication gap, which can be super tricky, even in everyday situations.
It is. It really is. And, what I think is interesting is how important clarity becomes when we're talking about health.
Yeah.
Simply saying, I don't feel good doesn't really give a doctor much to go on, right? So the article really stresses this point of describing your symptoms with specifics, and that means thinking about the intensity of the pain. Is it a mild ache or is it, a sharp stabbing pain?
Yeah.
How long has it been going on and really what kind of sensation is it? Is it throbbing? Is it burning? Is it a dull ache? All of these details are like little puzzle pieces that help medical professionals figure out what's actually going on.
Right. Because saying something vague like my stomach hurts could mean so many different things.
Right.
It could be indigestion. It could be something way more serious. And you don't want to leave any room for misinterpretation, especially in a situation like that.
Yeah. It's like trying to fix a car by just saying it's broken.
Yeah.
You need to give the mechanic more details if you want them to actually help you.
That's a great analogy.
And it's not just about describing what you're feeling. It's also about understanding what the medical team is telling you.
Right.
The tests they want to run, the treatments they recommend, whether or not you need to be admitted to the hospital. All of that can be a lot to process even in your native language.
Yeah.
Let alone when you're trying to navigate it all in English.
Especially if you're not, 100% fluent.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then there's the whole world of, prescriptions, which can be a bit of a minefield in itself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Making sure you understand the dosage, how much to take, how often, when to take it. All of that, and of course being aware of any potential side effects. Those are all things that you really don't want to get wrong.
No, you don't. And, that's something the article emphasizes really well.
Right.
These are not details you want to just kind of gloss over.
Absolutely not.
It's your health.
Yeah.
Your recovery, you got to be on top of it.
And speaking of things you want to be on top of.
Right.
What about the whole, practical and sometimes kind of stressful side of things, like insurance and payments?
Ugh. Yeah, nobody wants to be, deciphering medical bills or trying to figure out their travel insurance coverage when they're already feeling under the weather.
Right.
So being able to handle those conversations clearly in English is another super important skill.
Absolutely. And, thinking about the bigger picture, one thing that really stood out to me from the article was that tip about asking for a translated medical report.
Oh, yeah.
Before you leave the hospital or the clinic. That foreign country.
That's such a good point.
Because it's not just about, having a piece of paper. It's about making sure that your doctor back home has the full story.
Yeah.
Your diagnosis, your treatment, what medications you were prescribed, all of that.
It's continuity of care.
Exactly.
And it can prevent a lot of potential headaches down the line.
And misinterpretations.
Exactly. And I think in the midst of a health scare, it's easy to overlook these practical things.
Yeah, you're not really thinking straight. You just want to get better.
Yeah, exactly.
But having that translated report can really make things so much smoother when you get back home.
It really can.
And while we're on the topic of preparation, the article also reminds us about something that seems so simple, but it's so crucial, which is having an emergency contact list readily available.
Oh,
It might seem obvious, but in a stressful situation, you might not be thinking clearly.
exactly.
And having that list, easily accessible can be a lifesaver, both for you and for the medical staff.
Absolutely. And, speaking of being prepared linguistically,
Yeah.
the article then moves into the section called Advanced English for Medical Situations.
Okay.
And it really dives into some specific types of phrases that are commonly used in these contexts.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we could start by tackling phrasal verbs.
Okay.
Those pesky little combinations of verbs and prepositions that can sometimes trip people up?
They can be tricky.
Can you tell us about the ones that the article highlights?
Sure. Yeah. So the first one that jumped out was come down with, which basically means, to start feeling sick.
Right.
So the article gives some examples like, I came down with food poisoning after trying that street food.
Oh, no.
Or she thinks she's coming down with a cold because she's been sneezing a lot.
Yeah.
So instead of just saying, I think I have the flu,
No.
you would say, I think I'm coming down with the flu.
Yeah.
Which suggests, it's kind of in the initial stages.
It's that onset,
Yeah.
beginning stage.
Okay. And another one that's super useful is check up on,
Okay.
which means to kind of monitor someone's health or their progress.
Yeah.
So the examples are, the nurse will check up on you every few hours to monitor your temperature.
Mm.
Or my family kept checking up on me after my surgery to make sure I was recovering well.
Right. So it implies that kind of regular assessment.
Yeah, it's more than just a quick glance. It's
Yeah.
like, they're really paying attention to how you're doing.
Exactly.
And then the last phrasal verb they mention is pass out,
Okay.
which means to lose consciousness.
Right.
So the examples they give are, he passed out from the heat while waiting in line, or if you feel like you might pass out, try to sit down and lower your head. Hopefully that's not a phrase you'll ever need to use.
Yeah.
But it's definitely good to know what it means if you hear it.
Definitely. Yeah. And, moving on from phrasal verbs, let's talk about collocations. Those words that often go together in English to sound more natural?
Right.
So the article points out severe pain,
Okay.
which means very intense or extreme pain.
Yeah.
So, for example, she was experiencing severe pain in her back after the accident. Or if you have severe pain in your chest, you should seek immediate medical attention.
So instead of saying like, I have very strong pain, you would use severe pain,
Exactly.
which is the more common and natural way to express that level of intensity.
It is, yeah. And another important collocation is emergency room,
Okay.
which refers to, that specific department in a hospital that handles urgent situations.
Right.
So you might hear examples like they had to rush him to the emergency room after he collapsed, or for serious injuries or sudden severe illness, the emergency room is the place to go.
Yeah. And then lastly, they talk about medical insurance,
Okay.
which of course is super relevant when you're traveling because you want to make sure you're covered in case anything happens.
Oh.
So the examples they give are make sure your medical insurance covers you when you are abroad, or having adequate medical insurance can provide peace of mind when traveling to a foreign country.
Right.
So all of these collocations, they really help you sound more, fluent and natural when you're talking about these medical situations.
They do. And, it's interesting. The article also points out some common mistakes that people make when talking about their health in English.
Okay.
And then it gives some better alternatives.
Right. Because even small mistakes can sometimes lead to big misunderstandings.
Absolutely. So, for example, instead of saying, I feel bad in my stomach, a clearer way to say it would be, I have a sharp pain in my stomach.
Yeah. Because feel bad is very vague.
It
It
is.
can mean so many things.
Yeah, you could be feeling emotionally bad or physically bad, and it doesn't really specify what's going on.
Right.
Whereas sharp pain is much more precise. It tells the doctor the type of pain.
Where it is.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that helps them, narrow down the possibilities.
Right. And another common mistake is saying, I need medicine for my head.
Yeah,
A better way to say it would be, do you have anything for a headache?
exactly.
Which is more polite
Oh, yes.
and also more specific.
Yeah, it clearly identifies what you're trying to address.
And lastly, they mentioned the mistake of saying, doctor, help me sick,
Oh, my goodness.
which, I can see how someone might say that if they're panicking.
I know if you're not thinking straight.
But a much better way to say it is, doctor, I'm feeling very unwell. Can you help me?
Yes, much clearer, more polite.
More grammatically correct.
Exactly. And these small tweaks in phrasing, they can make a huge difference in how effectively you communicate with healthcare providers.
Absolutely. And, beyond the specific language itself, the article also gives some really excellent bonus preparation tips for traveling.
Oh, yeah.
These are like golden nuggets of wisdom that I thought everyone should keep in mind.
Absolutely.
So the first one is to proactively learn some key medical phrases in English before you travel. Even if you don't consider yourself fluent, having those basic phrases at your disposal can be a huge help.
It can, especially in those crucial moments when you need to communicate quickly and clearly.
Right. How to describe common symptoms, pain, allergies, all of that.
Yeah, it can be a real game changer.
And then they also emphasize the importance of carrying important medical documents with you at all times.
Yeah, list of allergies, any medications you take regularly, emergency contact information. Having all of that on hand can really streamline things for the medical staff if you need assistance.
Yeah, it takes the guesswork out of it.
Exactly.
And lastly, they remind us that knowing the local emergency number is absolutely essential.
Oh,
don't just assume that 911 will work everywhere, because it doesn't.
It doesn't.
So do your research before you go find out what the emergency number is for that specific country, and, program it into your phone.
Yeah.
Just in case.
It could save you precious time.
It really could.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We've talked about the communication challenges that can come up in medical emergencies abroad.
Right.
We've learned some really useful phrases, and we've also gotten some great practical tips from the article that you shared. So now for our listeners out there, I have a final challenge for you.
Okay.
Imagine you're out exploring a new city.
Okay.
You're having a great time sightseeing, and suddenly you start to feel really dizzy and weak.
Oh.
Using one phrasal verb and one collocation that we discussed today, how would you ask for help in English?
Ooh, that's a good one.
So take a moment to think about it.
Yeah, really put those language tools to work.
Yeah, mentally rehearse
Yeah.
how you would handle that situation.
And then ultimately, while knowing the right English phrases is super beneficial,
Absolutely.
I think it's important to remember that being prepared and staying calm are key in any emergency.
Yeah, regardless of the language.
Regardless of the language.
Your demeanor can make a big difference.
It really can.
So we hope this deep dive has left you feeling more confident and prepared for any unexpected health issues during your travels.
We do.
We really appreciate you joining us for this deep dive. And, we'd love to hear your thoughts. So if you have any other tips or strategies for staying healthy and safe abroad,
Yeah.
feel free to share them in the comments. And until next time, happy and healthy travels. Everyone, goodbye.